counted, and different kinds of machines. Candidate rights are where voter rights were in the 1920s, and that the Supreme Court is supremely indifferent to state statutes that provide an unconstitutional burden on people trying to get on ballots. And we've had 6 cert petitions turned down, although I understand there was a little disagreement on one of them, and Breyer was pushing for not denying cert. We just won a Ninth Circuit case that invalidated an Arizona statute that said you couldn't petition for signatures in Arizona unless you were a resident of Arizona. So that is the case in about 1/3 of the states. So we're moving along. The Pennsylvania Attorney General just indicted 12 Democrats for their criminal exclusion of our candidacy and others in '04. Actually, they did it in such a brazen way. You had to think that it was just business as usual. They had 50 legislative aides working furiously for an entire week, going over our nominating petitions. And they did it on government time, on government space, and with taxpayer money. And when they knocked us off the ballot, they got $188,000 in taxpayer bonus. Now, when you do something like that, you might infer that they thought the Republicans were able and willing to do the same thing for their cause. But we have a good Attorney General on that, and he's really going to blow it wide open. So there's some progress in that. I think there should be one federal standard for ballot access for a federal office, not 50 different, and then county regulations and so forth. I stress this because without candidate rights, providing a broad spectrum of choice and agenda and energy on the ballot, in a gerrymandered country that prevents even a 2-party competition in many congressional state legislative districts, what good are voter rights? You know, some of us remember when the Kremlin used to proudly announce that 97% of the voters turned out in that election. We'd all laugh because there's only one candidate on each ballot line. So candidate rights are extremely serious, not just for candidates, but to give voters a broader choice and a reason to turn out in a country that turns out fewer of its voters percentage-wise than any Western democracy. Beyond that, we have staked out certain redirections for the country, reconsiderations that pretty much are supported by a majority of the American people. But the system is so rigged in favor of the 2 parties, exclusion from debates, and exclusion from ballots, and all kinds of other ways. Like, for example, we just lost an elector in Virginia because he moved to New York. And the Virginia officials are saying, we have to start all over with our petition drive. Well, they don't do that to the major parties. I mean, they lose electors all the time. They get sick, they move, they pass away. And so the majority position on getting out of Iraq, the majority position on full Medicare for all with efficiencies, the majority position on living wage, the majority position on recasting our tax system, the majority position on taxing things we like the least or dislike the most first before you tax human labor, like security speculation tax, which we don't have, carbon tax, addictive industry tax, corporate criminal tax, etc. I think people would resonate with that kind of priority for tax policy. Living wage is really the one that shows the political corruption of the 2 parties. McCain is satisfied with the present federal minimum wage, which will reach $7.25 by next year. And Obama thinks that a living wage is $9.50 an hour by 2011. $9.50 an hour by 2011 is less in inflation-adjusted purchasing power than a minimum wage in 1968. That's how we're going backwards into the future. And you got 1 out of every 3 workers in this country is making under $10.50 an hour. They're making 8, 7, 6, 7, Walmart wages before deductions. That isn't even a major issue. It wasn't in 2000, it wasn't in 2004. It's hardly mentioned now. That's 1 out of every 3 workers, 47 million workers. Let that sink in, because politics is supposed to be about using power to respond to the legitimate necessities of the people, substantively and procedurally. That's a pretty legitimate necessity. I just met a woman who was working at the Charlotte airport for National Rent-A-Car, and I asked her, what does she get paid? She's been working 15 years, and she gets $8.75 an hour. It's hardly on the radar screen. What is the press reporting on McCain and Obama? More and more micro-trivia over fewer and fewer issues. And because Kenneth Galbraith used to say, societies won't change until the contented classes become discontented. And there's a lot of truth to that. We all know that changes really don't come from the poor. They're too desperately trying to get through the day, etc. And there are just too many contented classes in our country that are up in the top 5, 4, 3, 1%. And the concentration of wealth and power is now reached an all-time high. Top 1% have financial wealth equal to the bottom combined of the bottom 95%. And what's happened to CEO salaries and how the incentive to hike them to obscene levels of 400 to 500 times the average work wage in the company has given them an incentive to cook the books, as we've seen time after time, reports in the Wall Street Journal, in order to get their stock options more valuable. And it would be unheard of when we were growing up, Bill and I, for any CEO to make more than 30 times the average worker wage. In 1940, the CEOs of the Fortune 300 made 12 to 14 times the average wage. It's now between 400 and 500. So the head of Walmart's making $11,000 an hour, 8 hours a day, and his workers are making $7, $8, $9, $10 an hour. So that kind of wealth disparity, Obama won't touch it, except in a few phrases, but he has no proposals or anything. He has received more corporate interest money than even McCain has been able to attract. And certainly he is the darling of corporate attorneys. They can't wait to max out for him. So what we have here is this strange situation where you have the first potential African-American president basically operating systemically in a way not to raise the issues of concentration of power and wealth and how it radiates back on people's daily lives in their health, safety, and economic well-being. Nobody in Washington associates any distinct proposal with Barack Obama dealing with 100 million lowest income Americans at all. And you remember that he wants to expand the military budget, which is already 1/2 of the federal budget's operating expenditures, aside from insurance, Medicare, etc. And it's full of waste, fraud, abuse, documented ad infinitum by, GAO and Pentagon audits, Halliburton, KBR, Blackwater, and here's this change candidate, and he won't take it on. He's never met a weapons system he doesn't like, along with Hillary. I talk to people in the Office of Secretary of Defense who have weapons systems they don't like the Osprey helicopter and the F-22. So, what this campaign is trying to do is raise the essential issue of politics, which is the distribution of power. Who has it, who doesn't have it, who should have more of it, who should have less of it, and then you get down to the details.